Today we continue our journey through 2 Samuel chapters 13 through 15. The Lord forgave David's sin, but forgiveness did not erase every earthly consequence. Nathan had warned David that the sword would never depart from his house. Chapter 13 shows the devastating consequences of sin entering David's family. David's son, Amnon, became obsessed with his half sister Tamar. Through deception, Amnon assaulted and raped her. Afterwards, something shocking happened. Amnon hated Tamar. The desire that had consumed him turned into hatred. He ordered her out of his house, leaving her devastated and dishonored. Tamar tore her robe, put ashes on her head, and went away in grief. Absalom, Tamar's brother, took her into his home. David heard what had happened and became furious. But scripture says David did nothing. That silence would now have consequences. 2 years later, Absalom arranged for Amnon to be killed. Then Absalom fled to Geshur, to the house of his maternal grandfather, King Talmi. He remained there for 3 years. In chapter 14, Joab recognized that David longed for Absalom. He arranged for a wise woman from Tekoa to speak to the king. She told David a story about a widow whose two sons had fought, and one had killed the other. Now the family wanted to execute the surviving son, leaving her without an heir. David ruled that the son should be protected. Then the woman applied her story to David's own situation. She argued that David should bring back his banished son. David realized that Joab had arranged the entire conversation. Absalom was brought back to Jerusalem, but David would not allow him to come into his presence. 2 more years passed. Finally, Absalom demanded Joab's attention. Then Joab refused to come. Absalom set his field on fire to force him to respond. Eventually, Joab brought Absalom before David. Absalom bowed before the king. David kissed his son, but the relationship had not been truly restored. The outward reunion did not heal the deeper wounds. Chapter 15 shows Absalom beginning to steal the hearts of Israel. He stood at the city gates and presented himself as the man who would listen to the people's complaints. He told them that if he were judge, he would give them justice. He slowly built loyalty to himself. Then Absalom went to Hebron and declared himself as king, y'all. A conspiracy had grown. David was forced to flee Jerusalem. He left behind 10 concubines to care for the palace. David crossed the Kidron Valley and went up the Mount of Olives, weeping barefoot and with his head covered. The king was leaving his own city. David had once fled from Saul. Remember that? Now he was fleeing from his own son. When David heard that Ahithophel had joined Absalom, he prayed, Lord, turn Ahithophel's counsel into foolishness. Then Zadok the priest brought the ark of God. David told him to return it to Jerusalem. David said that if he found favor with the Lord in his eyes, the Lord would bring him back and allow him to see the ark and the place where it dwelled again. But if not, David was willing to submit to the Lord's will. That is a different David than the man we saw in chapter 11. Yeah, he is now experiencing the painful consequences of his sin, but he is still placing himself in the hands of God. Now, what do these chapters teach and show us? Sin can produce consequences that reach far beyond the person who commits it. Forgiveness does not mean consequences will always disappear. Silence in the face of evil can allow wounds to deepen. Outward reconciliation does not always mean true restoration, and ambition can disguise itself as concern for justice. Even in suffering, God's people must submit to God's will. Now, let's connect all of this across Scripture. David's family crisis shows the seriousness of Numbers 32 and 23. You may be sure that your sin will not find you out. Absalom's ambition reflects the warning of Proverbs 16 and 18. Pride goes before destruction. David's prayer in the face of suffering points us toward Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane, who also submitted himself to the Father's will. And David's journey up the Mount of Olives reminds us that the true son of David would also pass through suffering before entering into his kingdom. Now, I'm encouraging you to read 2 Samuel chapters 13 to 15 in full. Watch the consequences of David's sin unfold within his own family. Watch how wounds, silence, ambition, and unresolved conflict create destruction. And remember, God forgives sin, but sin is never harmless. The story continues tomorrow.